Hello there! Are you interested in getting into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, but find all of the different summoning styles like Normal, Effect, Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, and Link a tad confusing to learn off the bat? Or perhaps do all the complex modern archetypes seem like a daunting task to get to grips with? In fact, maybe you're not new. Perhaps you're a Yu-Gi-Oh! Veteran who craves for the long gone days of a simpler Yu-Gi-Oh! Where a turn would consist of a summon and a set, and usually that was about it. Well then, do I have a treat for you? As of the 24th of January 2019, a new type of dueling has been released for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game called Speed Duels. The idea behind Speed Duels is to take the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game back to a simpler time. In fact, if you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links or the latest Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns, then you probably already have a rough idea of what speed dueling is all about. So how about we learn all about this new type of dueling together in The Idiot's Guide to Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Dueling. First up, what is speed dueling? Well, it's just like regular dueling. Both you and your opponent construct a deck made up of monsters, spells, and traps. You are both given life points, with the objective being to use your cards in order to defend yourself against oncoming attacks, as well as to take the offensive and attack your opponent to reduce their life points down to 0. And when a duel starts, you both draw a starting hand, with the player who goes first not being allowed an extra draw in exchange for going first. Pretty standard stuff so far, so what makes speed dueling different? Well, it's in the details that speed dueling sets itself apart, as well as one brand new mechanic exclusive to the speed dueling format. So, what are these changes? Well, when you begin a duel in a speed duel, you now only draw 4 cards instead of 5. The traditional 8,000 life points you normally get in a master duel is cut right in half, going all the way down to 4,000 life points. The traditional main deck size of 40 to 60 cards is, well, sliced down again to a mere 20 to 30 cards. The usual extra deck of 15 cards max, well, it's been cut all the way down to only a maximum of 5 cards. Speaking of 5, remember the usual 5 monster zones? Well, now they're at 3. The same goes with the spell and trap zones, as they're now at 3 as well. So what about the pendulum zones and the extra monster zones? Well, get them out of here. They're gone. In fact, while we're at it, let's get rid of Link, Pendulum, Xyz, and Synchro monsters. Begone with you all, I say. Never show your face around here again. Well, for now at least. And here's another big one. Traditional Master Duel Yu-Gi-Oh! Has 2 main phases. One before the battle, known as Main Phase 1, and one after the battle phase, which is Main Phase 2. Well, in speed dueling, you only have a Main Phase 1. So that means after you have battled, you go straight to your end phase. So always make sure to set any spell or traps you want to use before you enter your battle phase. In fact, in a nutshell, this is what has happened. Now, that's not to say dueling is all about stripping down the game to simplify it. In fact, we actually have a brand new mechanic that is integral to the success of your duels, and that is the brand new skill cards. The skill cards are the new blue-coloured cards that have the ability to alter the state of a duel when a certain criteria or timing is met. They exist outside of your main and extra deck, and you can only use 1 skill card of your choice per duel. The skills basically allow a duelist to channel their favourite character's abilities into their dueling. For instance, if you've always wanted to screw the rules like Kaiba, well, there's a skill for that. Or if you've ever wanted to do a top deck clutch like Yugi, there's a skill for that too. In fact, there are currently 6 character-themed decks available at the moment for Yugi, Pegasus, Ishizu, Kaiba, Joey, and Mai, and each one of those has 3 skills exclusive to them that all have unique effects. So the question then becomes, how do we use skill cards in a duel? Well, you begin a speed duel by choosing one of your skills to use. After you have chosen one, you place it face down next to the main deck. Why here? Well, there isn't actually an official zone for the skill cards, which I think they might as well have added to the playmat, but since there isn't one, skill cards can go anywhere that isn't a zone, so for simplicity, let's just say it's right here, shall we? Now, skill cards are set face down, so that your opponent doesn't know exactly what skill you are going to use until the duel is underway. They may have an inkling, as the back of the skill cards do reveal what character the skill belongs to. However, it does not reveal the actual skill. This creates a great way to do a psychological battle with your opponent to make them second guess what skill you have brought out into the fray. If we take a closer look at the skill cards, we can see on the back you have the character name with an image of that character. But more importantly, the text in the blue box will state what you do with the card at the moment the duel starts. For instance, the skill card Final Draw states flip this card over when you activate this skill. So how do we know when we can activate this skill? Well, we look at the reverse side of the card, which states you can activate this card during your main phase. So, when it's my main phase, if I so choose, I can activate this card by announcing its activation and then flipping it over. I can then apply its effect of, once per turn, during your turn, you may place a counter on this skill. If it has 3 or more counters when you would draw a card, you may search your deck for any card and add it to your hand instead. So, this skill grants you a really powerful effect. Oh, hang on a minute, there's actually a little bit more. What does this say? At the end of the turn you use this skill, you lose the duel. Oh dear, so it does seem that this skill should always be used as a very last resort in order for you to win on the turn that you use it. Another type of skill card, like Power of Dark, activates a little bit differently, since it states at the start of the duel, place this card in your field zone and flip it over. So the difference with this card is that at the moment the duel begins, you flip this card over and then immediately move it over to the field zone, where it becomes an actual field spell card. You can also identify what this card becomes in its card description, as it shows you what type of card the skill will become after its activation. So it seems there are 2 types of skill cards so far. There's the first type that once activated become a physical card in the game that can be interacted with, something like Yugi's Power of Dark we just mentioned, or another example would be Pegasus's It's a Toon World, as that skill card becomes a continuous spell card and is placed in the center spell and trap zone after it is activated. This means that they are now at risk of being destroyed by cards like Mystical Space Typhoon. However, most skills don't become physical cards on the field after they are activated. Their effects usually occur completely outside of the field. Something like Final Draw we mentioned earlier, or Mind Scan would be an example of this, since when its criteria is met and it triggers, the effect is then applied outside of the field, and after this it either remains face up on the field, unable to be interacted with, or goes back to being face down for future use. It's very important to note that skill cards are not spells, traps, or monsters, and as such they do not start a chain when they activate, which means that their activation cannot be responded to in any way. Basically boiling down to, they cannot be negated. Only skill cards that eventually become field spells or continuous cards are the ones that can be destroyed, and that's only after they have been activated and resolved being on the field. So knowing all this, the idea behind the skill cards is to choose the ones that you think would best suit the duel you're in, that complement your deck, and use it to your advantage to overpower your opponent. However, there's one more thing worth mentioning about speed dueling, and that is... So one of the biggest implementations to speed dueling is the fact that in order to keep the game balanced and to prevent broken cards from being used in speed duels, only speed duel cards are allowed to be used in speed duels. You can identify these speed dueling cards by the speed duel watermark found in the box at the bottom of the cards. The reason this rule has been implemented is because, first of all, it creates a fairer and simpler format for players, keeping troublesome cards away from the more casual dueling style, which in turn helps new players slowly get used to the concept of Yu-Gi-Oh! And allows them to slowly grow over time just as the card game is growing too. The second benefit is using a card pool is much simpler than having an ever-expanding new cards allowed list on a website somewhere, since it would be rather tedious to keep searching through it every new expansion to see which of your Master Duel cards you can put into your deck. But speaking of that though, the third reason is that old cards added to speed duels will now have been reprinted, meaning that their effects will receive a shiny new update to make the wording more modern and easy to understand. As well, any errators they may have received over the years will be applied to the card as well, which will help prevent any confusion of what the card actually does. It's probably worth keeping in mind that even though you can't use non-speed duel cards in speed duels, you can use speed duel cards in master duels if you so choose, with the only exception being the actual skill cards. However, I do wonder how a master duel with skill cards would play out. Could be interesting. And with all that said, that is pretty much speed dueling. I hope you learned everything you wanted to throughout this video, but don't worry if you didn't, as speed dueling is pretty simple to pick up if you're new to the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. Goodbye everyone, and thanks for watching.